Thank you for joining the marketing show. My name is Matthew Kilmurry, founder and CEO of apartmentgeofencing.com and hotelgeofencing.com, and I'm your host. We've got an exciting show today. We'll be discussing how generative AI is reshaping multifamily and how we've barely scratched the surface of its capabilities. So let's dig right in. Before I go into some of the questions, joining us today is Anthemos Georgiades. Welcome to the show.
Matthew, thank you for having me.
So let me do a quick bio of Anth, so everyone here, if you already haven't heard of him, knows a little bit about him. He's the co-founder and CEO of Zumper. At Zumper, Anth leads the company in its mission to make renting a home as easy as booking a hotel. Since 2012, Anth has grown Zumper into one of the largest online rental marketplaces with tens of millions of annual users and has raised 180 million in venture capital for the company. Prior to his work at Zumper, Anth worked at Boston Consulting Group in London and New York City, and interestingly, was an economic advisor on the 2010 British election. Welcome to the show.
So good to be here. Thank you for having me, Matthew.
Very glad to have you on board. We got lots to talk about, and so I want to jump right in. So let's start kind of at the beginning. How do you envision generative AI impacting multifamily, particularly in terms of improving the user experience for prospects, but then also for owners and operators?
So given we're kind of an ILS, one of the 4 or 5 kind of big ILSs, we think all the time about where will tomorrow's renter be searching? You know, she's in Google now, maybe in TikTok and Instagram, but where will she be tomorrow? And we think about Gen AI very much as in 2 years' time, a significant portion of people who come through Google and SEO today will come through Gen AI, could potentially one browser tab. So whether that's ChatGPT, Gemini, Anthropic, and we as an ILS on behalf of our PMCs have to think through how do we power these Gen AI search engines that really may displace Google, and how do we feed our clients' listings to the top of those searches? And so from the user experience, moving from starting in Google and then ending on an ILS to starting in a Gen AI tool, but still ending on an ILS to actually submit the lead is going to be a seismic change to our industry. One piece of data, Zumper built the first ever GPT on ChatGPT, so we can actually see what's happening. This is under 1% of Zumper's monthly traffic today, so it is still not a majority. But the user experience change and the growth we've seen shows us that this is really going to happen. And so for the prospects, huge change in where they begin their search. You've seen it in TikTok, but you're going to see an even bigger shift coming through Gen AI tools. And then I think when they end up on the ILS, they'll have a better experience. They won't just be setting filters, sending a message. There should be assistants and agents who help them from A through Z of their search. So I think the user experience will change massively. From the PMC or operator's perspective, I guess 2 kind of obvious thoughts. Many of us in multifamily have heard about centralized leasing. It's been a theme since I even started Zumper like 10 years ago. This puts teeth behind centralized leasing, using AI agents to chat and pre-qualify prospects, and then giving leasing teams or centralized leasing teams higher order things to work on is absolutely starting to happen. And the second thing I'd say is like innovative marketing. So we're working on a bit of this stuff at Zumper. I know, Matthew, you've done some stuff here too around taking kind of really beautiful photography or videos and using Gen AI to market them without having to hire an actor or a voice. Just doing it programmatically will massively change the way prospects find PMCs.
I'm so excited for there to finally be competition against Google, because I remember the day when they weren't the only search engine, and it was so nice for as a marketer to have different places to put our the clients that we were working with. And so now with social search growing and ChatGPT, to be able to see that it's not just going to be this one path and we're all crowded into the one path is going to be really, really great change. I think will help everybody. And I agree that from a prospect's perspective, they're trying to at the very beginning, just narrow their choices, right? Because we're all so busy, we don't have a lot of things. They still want to be wowed by the property. They want to be wowed, but they can't be wowed by too many things because they want to get down. So, they use Gen AI to help them filter, and so they don't have to kind of do all that. And then now's the time for the wow. Wow me with these couple properties. That's going to really help me understand which ones that I'm connected with.
And a couple of things on what you said, Matthew. Think about how like Zillow or some of these kind of old ILSs or real estate search engines began. They won Web 2.0, which is back in the early 2000s when Google came out, SEO was a thing, and they dominated those positions for 20 years.
Yeah.
This for me is very much the third computing shift, which is this is going to take over from that. And so the winners today, and this includes our PMCs and kind of owners who have to rethink their strategy of how a 19-year-old is going to find their property today, they are very unlikely to be typing apartment Santa Monica into Google. They're just not. And so there's an enormous step up opportunity for ILSs, marketers, PMCs in the next 24 months. The winners are kind of going to be decided. So this is like the top of the first inning, but it's moving really fast.
What a perfect analogy at right after the World Series is over. I love it. Um, so what role do you see AI playing in automating those customer interactions and such as the inquiries, providing personalized rental recommendations?
So at the risk of sounding slightly controversial, this stuff is ready to disrupt the entire industry. Like we've built a Gen AI kind of agent that we haven't publicly launched yet. Some of our competitors have, some of our customers and PMCs have. This is all ready now. And I think we could be having a very different discussion saying, wow, it has completely replaced leasing agents so they can do higher order things like keeping the residents happy and keeping kind of retention high. But the reason we're not having this conversation is the technology is there, but the edge cases are still pretty scary. So if the chatbot goes and answers a question that wouldn't comply with fair housing law or answers a question about crime in the neighborhood, and even though you can train these things to be as safe as humanly possible, the edge cases, even if they're 1 in 100, are still scary enough when none of us have really rolled this out at scale. So the nuanced picture here is the technology, whether we're all plugged into ChatGPT 4.0, Anthropic, Gemini's new kind of LLM, kind of Elon Musk's new XAI. The technology is there where we could have launched this all last night, but because of the guardrails us and our partners, the PMCs, we are putting in the kind of the safety checks so
Right.
that we provide a phenomenal experience to prospects while also complying with fair housing law. The technology is ready. It's just a little bit like a teenager right now, and we need it to grow up a little bit more.
Well, that makes sense because the mistake could only happen once, right? And that's one too many, and we all saw what happened when, Google rolled out their tool too early, and they just, I mean, they got hammered on that, right?
Hammered.
Yes. So that makes a lot of sense. But I can see how I've been watching how my teenagers are using ChatGPT and stuff, and they're allowing ChatGPT to take them where they want to go by saying, "I'm 17 years old. I really like this. I really like." They just tell them a little bit about themselves, and they say, "What should I wear for Halloween?" Right? They just throw it in there, versus typing in, Halloween costumes for 17-year-olds, right? Like
Totally.
they're used to like having almost this relationship where they're giving over critical personal information to the GPT and then just getting those recommendations back. And they're going to be renters soon, 3-4 years.
And one word to add to what you just said is memory. So, memory. It is a really interesting topic for various kind of reasons. The first is computationally, memory is actually very difficult. The fact that ChatGPT or Zumper's agent would get to know your 17-year-old, it sounds difficult. Sorry, sounds easy, but it's actually technically very difficult because these are very sophisticated queries that then has to marry to the memory. Secondly, ethically, it's dubious. Should an LLM get to know your 17-year-old or Zumper's 21-year-old user in her first ever rental search? Like, should we be storing that information? But to answer your previous question with memory, wow, imagine an ILS like Zumper could build a relationship with a renter over 10 years, remember all of their preferences. And so when she applies to the Avalon Bay, one of your ex companies, for her next lease, we know not just 10 years of leasing history, we know everything about her, and we're able to give her exactly what she wants, knowing she just had a kid and this Avalon would be the perfect situation. Now, sounds amazing. Technically, it's already possible, but because of the ethical and kind of computationally advanced kind of requirements, it's not as easy as it sounds, but it's doable. And memory is a really controversial but interesting thing that I think PMCs and owners are going to have to really think through, because it could make the next generation of marketing to prospects completely different, because
Yeah.
Google doesn't know who the hell you are.
Yeah.
It's a cold search, whereas we can remember who you are, but there are those concerns associated with it. And we're entering the world of trying to figure out how to do that best.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that too. I mean, talking about how the AI responds just to queries and the memory piece of it. We do a lot of videos for our clients. We used to in the past, because we do a lot of streaming TV advertising, and we used to do it through kind of the traditional way where we'd have a script writer, then a voiceover artist, then we'd add music, then we would go to the production people, and we get edits, and we do all that over again. It would take weeks, kind of back and forth. And when ChatGPT came along, we built an integration. We were able to do videos within minutes. And it hasn't reduced our creative team. Our creative team's actually grown from 6 to 16 people during that time. But it only gets us about, I'd say, 85% of the way there. There are always these nuances that we have to add to them. And so when you're talking about, I call it human assisted video. I've stopped calling it AI video. I'm going to now call it human assisted video. And so when you talk about chatbots where there's no human intermediary, right? I can see why there's some hesitancy there, because I would say none of the videos that we've done for clients have been 100% ready. There's always a couple of tweaks we need to make. I don't like the way it worded that. That's a little problematic, like those types of things. All right. So as generative AI continues to evolve, how are you exploring its potential to enhance those property listings and visibility either on your ILS or elsewhere?
I guess one way is, as an ILS, we've been, used to receiving XML MITS feeds from our customers
Yeah,
via
misfeeds.
Yardi RealPage. Yeah, you're familiar with them. These very arcane feeds. And a lot of the weight of work has fallen on our customers to show off their best amenities and like write a
Yep.
cool description. You know, using machine learning and LLM technology around AI, we can now extract all of that information directly. So,
Yeah.
if the first photo is a stunning kitchen with like plug and pole utilities, we can see that using AI. We don't really need someone in a marketing team to write that down.
Yep.
And so I beyond just finding renters in new places, I think AI will completely kind of like improve kind of tour to lease ratios, to be frank, and lead to tour ratios, because they'll basically be able to describe the unit so in such a more sophisticated way than today is kind of constrained by what the feed doesn't allow us to say. We just
Yep.
want to completely break out of that, where yes, we still need a feed with real-time unit level availability on Zumper, but we can do all of the work of showing what's in the units using some mashup of photography, video, and the descriptions, and we'll be able to like really highlight kind of what's special. And then if you marry it to my previous point, a bit like a Tinder, we could say, well, actually, if we have memory on this user, well, we know that she doesn't care about the fireplace, but she really cares about AC because her last unit didn't have it and she hated that. And so um, I think it will make marketing much stickier and much more tailored. And that's all AI. I don't think anyone on the PMC side, would need to do any more work. It's actually
Yeah.
just reducing the amount of work they would need to do.
Yeah, exactly. And I can tell you, having been on that side, we had hundreds of properties. And so were we, updating that those headlines, those descriptions? No, there was just no way. Every once in a while we do some big audit, maybe once a year, we go through, try to do it fast, we'd make some improvements. But it's not like something like that would reduce the need for the marketing team. It would just be like, really elevating the experience for everybody involved. I love that.
And that's, I think, a mistake that people make with AI. The doomy kind of
Right.
headlines are like human jobs are going away. But actually, if you look at all technology revolutions, actually they create jobs. It's just that the jobs are much more intellectually stimulating now, because a
Yep.
lot of the work that people didn't want to do can now be automated. And so how can you not be an optimist about that? I think it's
Right.
great.
Yes, I agree. And so, on the gloomy side of things, you talked a little bit about, but like, what are some of the ethical considerations beyond what you've already mentioned that's, you're taking into account when you're implementing Gen AI, including privacy, fairness and algorithms, and especially like rental matching?
Yeah, I guess the first one is on the kind of the reality of regulations and laws.
Yeah,
Gen AI without being trained will just answer a question around crime in a neighborhood or
right,
Section 8 in a way that they've learned on the internet, which, as we all know, is not the way you should answer those questions. There is a very specific way you need to answer those questions. And so the reality is we just say no to a bunch of questions. Our own agent, which is under wraps with a couple of our customers, but will launch soon, she answers it. She just says, no, I can't answer that question in a very neutral way. So the boring answer is some things you just have to pass on because it's not kind of ready for prime time. I think where you could get excited about this is if you think about blindly scoring residents, with no bias to like their sexual orientation or what they look like or where they came from. Like should in theory be the most objective thing ever, where you are judging someone blind. You should be able to see if they're going to be a kind of a credit worthy resident. So I feel very optimistic that we're going to be able to be even fairer in housing. Um, but like I said at the top, those things need more training. If we switched it on live now, 98 things would go really well, but the two things that would go badly would go so badly it would invalidate the other 98.
right.
So our industry is going to take baby steps towards it, but it's not far off. And so I'd say, yeah, the two things to watch for are definitely fair housing law or things that go against kind of arbitrary human laws that we've set. And the second thing is just judging people blind is where we really should be there. But we just need to make sure it works as intended.
Well, and we'll always be a little bit behind hospitality just because of the regulations that we have to abide by that they don't. But I look at what's happening within hospitality and I see some amazing things. So with Airbnb and VRBO, and Airbnb's done a really good job at this, is that they're using AI to kind of see how somebody's interacting with your listing and stuff like that, and giving hosts basically like a score for every person who submits a request. Hey, I'm interested in to rent with you next month. They'll say right up front, there's a low chance of booking, and it's just all based on their activity, versus like this person's a really high chance of booking, and kind of brings it all together. So I do really hope that we get to that place and we can do it in a fair way. So, and thank you so much for being a guest today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having
And
me. It was fun.
yes, this is fun. We could do many more, and I hope that we do. And thank you to everyone here on LinkedIn. I hope you join me again. Until then, love the journey, my friends.